I hear this a lot, seller's finance, and you can buy the business for $0. Sometimes it sounds like a little scammy.
Welcome to Business Buying for Financial Independence. I'm Tim Delaney, and I help young professionals buy small businesses so they can escape the 9-to-5 and take control of their time, income, and future. If that sounds like you, hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. Today, I have Tijera Wright. Tijera is the founder of Board and Bougee, a San Diego-based charcuterie and catering business known for elevated, joy-filled experiences for corporate events and workshops. After leaving her career as an IT business consultant at a Big Four firm, she took the leap into full-time entrepreneurship. Tijera is passionate about financial independence, business ownership, and learning how acquiring businesses can be a strategic path to long-term wealth. Tijera, welcome to Business Buying for Fi.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome. I am super excited to have you on today. We met on Threads, which is my favorite social media app these days, just very engaging. And you were talking about your charcuterie business, and I think I said something about buying a business, and I guess piqued your interest.
Yep.
So Tijera started her business from scratch, but one of the things that we had talked about on Threads was the idea of accelerating her growth or accelerating her path out of her 9-to-5 job through buying a business instead of building it up from scratch. Luckily for her, she has built it up enough to get out of her full-time job. But, from my perspective, it might have happened sooner had she bought something as well. But either way, she had some questions, and I figured it would be a good opportunity to do a kind of a coaching style Q&A podcast where she's actually going to be asking me more questions than I will be asking her. And hopefully I can answer some of them or all of them. We'll find out. So I guess with that, do you want to give everybody just a little bit more of a background of your career and what made you get into entrepreneurship in the first place and what you're thinking now?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Tijera. And so I grew up in Los Angeles, born and raised, and just being a hustler has always been in me, that entrepreneur spirit of building something and just finding ways to give back and give to people. So like in high school, I was selling chips and sandwiches as well, and then went to college for business, and then also started as an IT business consultant. And my passion is just bringing joy to others through food experiences. And being a charcuterie board business owner has allowed me to do that, is bring joy to others when they see it. It's beautiful and it tastes great. So I just love entrepreneurship where I'm able to be creative. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. And so one of the things that I talk to people about is like, it's great when you find a passion and you want to build a business around it. And sometimes it's not always readily available to go buy a business in your exact niche or your exact industry, but sometimes there's opportunities to buy industry adjacent businesses that you can build your passion on top of. And I think that was one of the things I suggested to Tijera is like, have you looked around at maybe there's an old deli or a cheese shop or something of that nature that might be for sale that you could buy? You have a steady stream of income coming in as you build out the charcuterie side of the business. And then you also, ideally are purchasing in bigger bulk volumes. Maybe you get a little more discount on product and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what kind of sparked our conversation. And I will kind of turn it over to Tijera here and see what questions she has about buying a business.
Yeah. So everyone talks about it's so great to buy a business because that is entrepreneurship. We think entrepreneurship is just starting a business from scratch and building it up, but also entrepreneurship is buying a business and you already have that profit in place and they have the systems in place. So that's what brought me into thinking about like, hey, I'm interested in buying a business. I have business skills that if something is already going going, I can keep it going. So, like, thinking about, like, the bigger picture, for someone like me that's brand new to buying business, what does the actual path look like? Because, like, right now, I'm like, I'm interested in buying a business. How do I go from I'm interested to I own a business?
Yep. Well, you already own one, so you're ahead of the curve. But
Yeah,
do
or
you
own a bus yes,
another one? Own another
or
one.
own a business that I brought. Yeah,
Yep.
uh-huh. Mhm.
So, what I usually tell people, one of the first steps is to start. If you don't have any business experience, if you're not already in business, the first step is to just kind of start exploring. Go try to talk to business owners. Go to some chamber of commerce meetups. Ask business owners questions what it's like to own their particular type of business. Uh, the other place that I like to send people, regardless of whether or not they already have a business, is bizbuysell.com or occasionally loopnet.com, and just start browsing the listings, whether you can sort those by industry nationwide, or you can sort them by your local town, your local city, your local county, and or your state, kind of wherever you're thinking. And it might make sense to just start extremely broad. Look at what's out there. You know,
Okay.
who knows? You find a charcuterie business in Oklahoma that you take a look at just to, look at the numbers, look at how they're doing, get some insight into what the valuation might be on a business like that. From there, from browsing to starting to get more serious about it would be starting to call some brokers, start to ask them questions. And you might want to start with calling a broker in Oklahoma, and pick their brain on that particular business that you saw listed. See if it's, get used to asking the questions. See what questions they ask you, because a
Mhm.
lot of times brokers are trying to qualify the buyers in that initial interaction. So the more you can sell yourself, the better. So now in your particular case, when you're calling a broker, and you might not need to do these trial runs with random brokers, but when you make that call, the first thing you want to do is qualify yourself. I'm Tijera. I own, Board and Bougee. I have been in business for over a year. I'm successful. I left my job. I'm looking to grow through acquisition. They'll take you far more seriously than somebody that just kind of calls and doesn't say anything about themselves first. So from there, the next step would be evaluating the business, getting to know the owner a little bit, getting to understand the financials, making an offer, which is usually in the form of a letter of intent, an LOI, then doing due diligence, which you go deep into all of the analysis of the business, and then actually getting a contract together, getting your financing together, and then closing on the business. And I
Okay.
kind of glossed over those points. We can go deeper into any of those as we continue here.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for breaking it down step by step, and I like that curiosity, because that's also, like, an attribute of an entrepreneur and, like, a high performer when I was in corporate, is being curious, asking questions, so I like how you said that, like, calling them up, asking them questions, seeing what questions they ask me, so if I don't know the answer, I'm researching and finding the answer when I call the next broker. So I really like that, and I think that is the first step I'm gonna take is browsing, those 2 websites and seeing what is out there. How much are the businesses? What are they doing? And just browsing to seeing what is out there, being curious. So I really like that.
Yeah, perfect.
Great. And then you talked about calling brokers and picking their mind and also evaluating the business. So maybe we can go into a little bit in depth about evaluating the business. So as a beginner, me being a beginner, how do I know if the numbers are solid and if something feels off
Hmm.
or a red flag?
Yeah, great question. The first thing you're going to look at is there's usually some generic numbers on the BizBuy site before you even call the broker. Some listings are better than others. They will share the gross revenue. Um, they will share whether or not there's real estate involved in that listing price. They usually have a listing price. They will usually have seller discretionary earnings (SDE) or EBITDA. earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. Those two figures, SDE and EBITDA, are kind of used interchangeably when valuing a business. That is all of the cash that a seller is currently taking home. What they do is they take any salary above and beyond what a person in that role would be getting paid. They add in the profit of the business. They add in any taxes that the current seller is paying. They add in any interest that the current seller is paying, and then any other depreciation or amortization, because those are non-cash expenses. And then once you have that number, they put a multiple on it to value the business. It can be anywhere from 0.5 to 25, just depending on the industry and the style of business, type of business. Usually in the small business realm, it's 2 to 5 times revenue, or not revenue, 2 to 5 times SDE. But it can vary wildly. So those are the basic numbers that you'll see in most listings, and that's kind of how you're going to make your first decision on whether or not you want to pursue it or not. If the asking price is way out of line, it might not be worth anybody's time for you to look into it more. If the asking price is reasonable within reason, then you start down that road. Some of the early red flags that I look for are inconsistencies. So you talk to the broker, you see the listing, there's certain numbers that are presented there, and then you get into some conversations either with the broker or with the seller, and you start hearing different numbers or inconsistent numbers. That's kind of a red flag for me, and it shows me that either the broker's trying to package something and spin something in a way that the seller's not really on board with or doesn't understand, or there might be some fudging of the numbers. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to run away, but it just puts me on guard a little bit more. So that's one of the early red flags. The other red flags that I look for in those early conversations is, are there a lot of family members working in the business? And if so, are they being paid properly? Are they underpaid, overpaid? What's the situation? Are they paid at all? Those can be other, sometimes people have a whole bunch of family members working in the business and they're not even getting paid. So when you go to take over, you're going to have a lot of roles to fill and a higher payroll. So those are kind of some of the early numbers, and you have to kind of trust but verify. So the broker, once you have that conversation, they're going to usually send you a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, and you're going to sign that. So then they'll send over the SIM, the confidential information memorandum, I believe. I always forget what that stands for, but it's the packet basically of the current financials. Sometimes they'll include the tax returns, the market potential as they see it, all that kind of stuff. It's confidential. You can review that. And again, you kind of have to take them at their word at this point of what those numbers are, until you get into due diligence. So if you believe what they say, you make an offer, and then during due diligence is when you really start tearing apart those numbers and really digging deep and asking the hard questions to uncover if everything is what it appears to be.
Okay, yes, and I like that, trust but verify. That was, like, ingrained in me in my corporate world, because I, helped, clients, address their IT risk, so trust but verify is really good, and that's a good red flag, and I also like the family members. You never think about that, like, if there's a lot of family members and they're not being paid because they're, like, volunteers and you're just helping out your family members, when you take over, you're like, "Oh, no, I have to be the social media person, the operations person, because now the family members won't be there anymore." So that's like a really good red flag to look out for. And then you talked about, so we're talking about evaluating the business. How can you look at the numbers and know if something is off and what we should be looking for? You said if the asking price is good. So can we go into more about what good means? I know you did talk about it has small businesses are 2 to 5 times the SDE. Can we go into a little bit, and this might be a lot of math, but what should we be looking for and what does good mean?
It's all relative. So I'll
Okay.
start with that. It's more of like, is it astronomically overpriced? So if the SDE is $100,000 and the asking price for the business is $2 million, that would be a 20 times multiple. And there's not many small businesses that are trading at that type of multiple. So my gut instinct would be it's not even worth talking to the broker because it's just too unreasonable. We're going to be too far apart on a price. Now, the the caveat to that is, does that $2 million include real estate? Is there a building on a prime street in a downtown San Diego that
Mhm.
the building alone is worth $1.95 million?
Uh-huh.
Then it's a different story. Um, And so you kind of have to look at that. That's really what I mean. I mean, most listings are not that crazily priced, but there are occasionally ones out there, and it's also a personal thing too. So, I mean, I'm assuming if you're going to go into that same industry that you're in, you know what you want, and you know what you're looking for. For some of us, when we're looking, we're a little bit more open with the type of industry we want. However, I might be willing to overpay for something in one industry, but not in another industry. So I'm like, I would do that. That sounds like a good business, but the price has got to be very right. Like it's got to be an amazing deal for me. Versus, okay, I like that business. I'm willing to pay a little bit more than I should because it's going to give me an advantage for this reason or that reason, or it's going to add on to my existing businesses or something of that nature. So it's kind of a relative thing. I very rarely just completely rule something out unless it is just an insane thing. So that SDE, so again, using that $100,000 number,
Mhm.
if the asking price is somewhere in the $100,000 to $500,000 range, that's reasonable. Once it starts getting above that, now I'm looking to see, okay, is there real estate involved? Are there a lot of other hard assets? Like, are there vehicles? Are there big, heavy machinery equipment type things that could justify them charging a little bit more for the business? Uh, that's, you know, then you might find that out as well. Not that I necessarily want to pay a lot higher just because there's some other equipment or things like
Mhm.
that. It really kind of depends on the type of business.
Okay, that makes sense on the industry. So, like, if it's like a trash service, you're gonna need that equipment for
Yep.
some trucks,
Yep.
because that's gonna help move the business operationally. And then, it's helpful to understand what is the asking price is good. So, between that 2 to 5 times the SDE because it could be different, and also looking for the future, like the profit as well. Like, if I'm looking at a business, am I going to be able to grow and scale this business? So maybe I might pay at the higher range of the 5 times the SDE because I am like, I can grow and scale this business. Or this business is like a business that can be, is like, it won't never go out of style.
Yeah.
So I understand why it would be different based on the business. And that's helpful to when I'm looking on those 2 websites, I'm looking at the SDE and looking at is it between 2 to 5 times the price, and then
Or
also
less.
it's different yeah, the 2 to 5 times, and then seeing if it's, looking at the industry, that's why curiosity, looking at what's going on in the market to know what businesses to buy and what not, and what won't be here 5 years from now. So
Yep.
that's good, that's good.
Yeah. And like I said, it could be even less. Like I've talked to people who've sold their business for 0.75 of their
Okay.
SDE because certain industries as professional services, there's a lot of client risk in that type of business where clients might leave after a transaction. Uh, and then, you know, you touched on something there that I want everybody to be careful about. You said, maybe you'd pay 5 times if you knew that you could grow the business. Just because you can grow the business doesn't mean that you should overpay for the business. If it's in an industry where the business should only be commanding a 2 or 3 times multiple, you don't want to pay 5 times just because you know that you can grow it. You don't want to pay for something that hasn't been done yet. This is something that comes up a lot in transactions, especially in business. I also see it in real estate where people say, well, the business is only worth this today, but you could do this, this, and this, and then it will be worth that, my asking price. And my answer to that is, well, if it's so easy to go do this, this, and this, go ahead and do it, and then I'll pay you what you want.
Oh.
So don't pay for something that's not there yet.
Mm.
Yes, you should go into the business with a plan to grow it a little bit or a lot, but you don't want to pay the seller for that unrealized opportunity. That's, if they want to do it, go ahead, be my guest, grow the
Okay.
business, and then I'll pay you whatever it is. I had Mike Weber on a podcast episode a little while ago. I'm blanking on the number, but he bought the business he worked for. He worked there for 25 years. About 10 years ago, he knew that he wanted to buy the business.
Mm-hmm.
And he realized that the price that he could pay for the business would not be enough for the seller to walk away and retire at his age. So Mike spent the next 10 years growing the business exponentially so that he could pay a higher price for that business. Sounds super counterintuitive, but because he grew the business, he helped the seller grow the business. He was able to pay the seller a higher price with bank funding and seller financing, and was able, the seller was willing to walk away at that point. So now Mike owns the business that he paid nothing out of pocket for because he grew it. He helped the seller realize that potential before selling it, and now he'll grow it. He'll continue to grow it, but he
Mm-hmm.
didn't overpay for the opportunity as it sat the day he bought it.
Okay, and I like that. Thank you for saying that because we think about that in real estate, like
Yeah.
I can, do some renovations in it, and in 5 to 10 years, it's going to be this much. So I'm willing to pay a little
Yeah.
bit more for
Yep.
it, or it's in a good location. So I really like that. We're not paying for potential. We're paying for the business as is,
Yep.
as right now. Is that
Yep.
what you're saying? Okay.
Exactly. And again, I'm going to say there's a caveat to everything on
Okay.
here
Yes.
all the time. You know, if it comes down to a couple $1,000s that you need to get over that hump to get the business, and you're going to keep that business for the next 10, 20, 30 years, I believe that it's okay to overpay slightly if you know that the long-term upside is going to be worth it. You don't want to drastically overpay for something that's not there yet, but if it gets the deal done and you're happy and you're making money, it's okay if you plan on holding it for a long term.
Yes, yes. Every situation is different. So that is helpful to know. Like sometimes you might pay a little bit more, like the person you had on the podcast because they were working in the business. They know the ins and outs and things and they help grow the business. So that is really good to hear that there's it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum of things. And so you did touch on seller's finance, and I hear this a lot, seller's finance, and you can buy the business for $0. Sometimes it sounds like a little scammy,
Yep.
Tim, to be honest with
Sure
you.
does. It sure does.
Yes. So can we talk about this? Because it sounds too good to be true that you can buy a business for $0. So can you explain seller's finance, not just maybe what it is, because I've listened to other podcasts where you explain what it is, but really how it works, not just the theory of seller's finance, but
Yep.
how it works. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yes, buy a business with $0 down definitely sounds spammy. And I got called out on not exactly that, but something similar by somebody on Threads the other day. I, I'm, you know, I don't advocate necessarily to go buy a business with $0 down. Can it be done? Yes. Should you do it if you have the opportunity? Maybe. But should you have some cash in reserve or access to cash in reserve? 100%. Like whether or not you buy the business with your cash or with somebody else's entirely, it is a good idea for you to still have some cash or access to cash at your disposal. So a line of credit on your house, or high limit credit cards if you really needed it, or ideally cash in a savings, high yield savings account, or even the stock market. Just
Mhm,
something that you have access to it if you need it.
mhm.
So could you buy it with $0 down? Yes. But should you have some money available? Yes. Um, so the way people talk about that is, and like Mike's case, he worked at the business. It was a lot. It is different. I had another woman on, Lindsay, episode 5. She bought her business that she was kind of brought in. She had her own business. She was brought into a business to buy it eventually, and the sellers financed that 100%. So, but again, she had some backup. She had some
Mhm.
reserve if she needed it. Sellers financing is essentially the sellers become the bank. So you think about when you're going to buy, or let me flip it around a little bit. Let's say
Okay.
you have a car, you want to sell it, and you have a 16-year-old kid who is ready to buy a car. That 16-year-old kid probably doesn't have enough cash saved up to buy a car yet, but you're a parent and you're sick of driving that kid around, and you want to help them buy a car. You just so happen to have a car that you're looking to get rid of so you can go get yourself a new one. You say, all right, Joe, I will sell you this car. It's $5,000. I know you don't have $5,000 because I see your bank account. So instead of you giving me that $5,000 all on the first day, you're going to give me $500 a month for the next 10 months, or $250 a month for the next 20 months, whatever that case is. Now, that's a zero interest situation. In reality, you'd probably put some interest on it and the payments would differ a little bit. But the principle is the same. We're just spreading out those payments. The parents in that situation, you have become the bank. You are financing that purchase of the car for your son. So he's making those monthly payments. If he stops making those monthly payments, you're probably going to take those keys away and say, hey, you stop paying for it. I'm taking the car back. I'm going to go take it and sell it and get my money now because I want my money.
Yeah.
And that's what seller's financing is with a business as well. They become the bank. So if the purchase price is $100,000 and you say, all right, can you finance 80% of that over the next 5 years, 10 years? You assign an interest rate, you do the calculation on that $80,000 loan, and you make monthly payments to the seller every month until the loan's paid off. If you stop paying those loans, and a lot of times there'll be other terms in the agreement of, if you're, uh, more so from the buyer side, you can put terms in the loan of, hey, if the biggest customer stops buying from me in the first year, I get to drop the loan amount by 10 grand. Or,
Mm.
um, or if this key employee leaves within a year, I get to drop the loan amount. So it helps a seller or a buyer. It also keeps the seller involved. So the seller has an interest in helping you if you need help. They're not obligated to come work. They're not obligated to answer every single phone call that you make, but they have an interest in making sure that the business succeeds because otherwise they won't get their money. Um, does that kind of answer your question on, did I Did I do a good job answering what is seller financing in principle?
Yeah. Yes, I love the analogy. Great analogy on what seller's finance is. So that is really helpful. The seller becomes the bank, and I like that the thinking of that they have an interest in it, and so helping you succeed, which is not obligated, but because they want to make sure that you are paying, so they don't have to take the keys away. We don't want that to happen. And so then also you talked about having cash reserve. So we talked about, you said it's not the best to do like 0% down. Cause like, let's make the analogy of a house, okay? And you put 20% down on a house and then you finance 80%. So say that we put 20% down on a business, do sellers finance for 80%. Now you're having income revenue coming in, so you're paying that loan. Um, but when we say cash reserves, how much cash reserve should we have? Because in the real estate, I think it is like 1%. You should have like 1% cash reserves for like um repairs and maintenance of like 1% of like what the house is worth. So thinking about that as me being wanting to buy a business, knowing what how much cash reserve should I have after I pay the down payment? Can you go into a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's going to vary quite a bit depending on the type of the business. Again,
Okay.
sorry, I probably sound like a lawyer or an accountant with all my. It depends. It depends. There's no hard and fast rule. Some business owners like to have, a month or a couple months of payroll put aside so that they know that they can pay people, because that's one of the most important things that you're gonna deal with. You don't want to miss payroll. That's the kind of the death nail into a business if you start missing payroll on people. Uh, Other people will say payroll and the loan payments. I want to have, 2, 3, 6 months of loan payments put aside, ready to go, just in case anything happens. We saw during COVID where some businesses just had to shut their doors completely and didn't have any revenue coming in. But their loans were still due. They still had to make payments. Their insurance companies were not giving them a break. Their landlords may or may not have been working with them a little bit, but even the landlords can't work with them forever because they have insurance payments and taxes and other stuff to pay.
Yeah.
For things like that, you want to have some reserves. There's also things that come up. I remember when I bought my wine and liquor store, I got my legal bill after closing. It was close to $8,000. That was a pretty big surprise. I didn't, I knew the legal bill was coming. I didn't know it was going to be that expensive. So having cash available was super important for that situation.
Hmm.
I just, on that note too, I wanted to share my breakdown of when I purchased a liquor store. I used a combination of seller and bank financing along with some of my own capital. So I put 10% into the deal. The sellers held a note for about 10%, and the bank gave me about 85%. So that adds up to 105% of the purchase price. So I was bringing extra cash anyway. The bank's percentage turned out to be higher because the purchase price got lowered a little bit at closing because of the inventory levels. But I was already planning to bring extra cash into the deal so that I had working capital from day one as well. So you can use combinations of different types of financing on
Okay,
that as
nice,
well.
nice. And that is helpful to understand what is how much cash reserves and to think about it like a house, like for unexpected expenses, so maintenance and repairs, and also like personal finances, like having an emergency fund. So having an emergency fund for the business because you didn't know that was going to come up because things do pop up that was not on the line item list. So that is good to hear. So whatever, like it's like a spectrum, like whatever you're comfortable with as a business owner, maybe you're more comfortable with 3 to 4 months of payroll, or it's a more trickier business. So maybe you are comfortable with more or less depending on what industry it is. So,
Yeah. And that's the 3 to 4 months of payroll is a pretty high number. You don't necessarily need to start out with that.
okay.
It's, and also, comparing it to real estate, if you're buying a house and you look at the roof and you see, you know what, that roof has seen better days. I might need to replace it within the first 2 to 3 years.
Mhm.
Your cash that you wanna have available in reserves should be higher than if you look at that roof and you know for sure that it was just put on brand new. Um, you know, you're comfortable with that roof, and I'm using the roof because it's one of the bigger expenses in a
Mhm.
home.
Mhm.
So, okay, that roof is solid. I can get away with a slightly lower reserve fund versus, oof, that roof, it should last 2 to 3 years, but there's a possibility I need to replace it in 6 months.
Okay.
So, and so then comparing that to businesses, there's going to be certain businesses with certain types of equipment or vehicles or um, infrastructure or inventory that you might need more reserves for than other types of businesses.
Okay. Okay. That's good. That's good. And then, so this is good. I think we went over the evaluating the business, the big picture, and then also the making the offer and the due diligence. But I feel like when like me being interested, I think the big ones are just like curiosity. So starting that exploration and then evaluating the business. And we were able to go in detail on that of what to be looking for. So, what do you think are some skills or experience that matter most before buying a business and what can be learned afterwards?
That's a great question. I take a little bit of a contrarian approach on this. I don't think you need to have any skills to buy a business. Um, with the caveat that you need to understand some finances. You need to understand the basics of how a business operates. You need to be able to learn, I guess would be the skill. Like you need to have the capacity to learn and to grow and to understand things as quickly as possible. Do you need a um, very specific, like, do you need to know the skills set of the particular business you're buying? Not not necessarily. I didn't know a ton about wine and liquor before I bought my wine and liquor store. I learned a lot on the job as I went. The different grape varieties, the different types of spirits, how they're made. All that stuff is learnable if you have the capacity to. I just interviewed a gentleman who bought a cabinetry company. He does not know how to make cabinets. I mean, could he watch a YouTube video and try to learn? Sure. Would it take him an entire year to build a kitchen by himself? Probably. And he wouldn't be very profitable. But he
Mhm.
bought the business he bought had enough solid long-term employees that he didn't need to know how to build the cabinets himself.
Mhm.
Um, you know, if you buy a certain type of business, plumbing, HVAC, electrical are pretty hot commodities right now in the home service space for people wanting to buy. Personally, I'm not super interested in those because I don't have those licenses. I don't have those specific trainings.
Mhm.
And it's not necessarily that you have to. Like I just said with the cabinet guy, if you buy the right business, you're not the one doing the work anyway. It doesn't matter. But depending on the size of the business, if you need a license where you are and your employee that had the license leaves, you could be stuck.
Mhm.
So, there's certain businesses where it would be helpful to have a certain skill, but there's plenty where you don't need to have those specific skills.
Mhm, mhm. And it's like where we've been keep saying it's a spectrum. It
Yep.
depends,
Yep.
it depends. So it depends. So
Yep.
I like that. Like you don't need to have it all figured out. Cause like me as well, starting a business from scratch, I didn't have it all figured out. I learned
Yep.
a lot on the job and I learn as I go. And so that is very good as buying a business is the same. You're not gonna know everything off the bat, but you will learn as you go and you just have to be willing to learn and have the capacity to learn. So that's really good. And then you talked about finances. So like understanding something you should know is to understand the finances. So I went to school for business and been out of school for 6 years, got my bachelor's in business, but they never told me SDE, to be honest. So they never taught me that. So what do you think? I know some finances, but I don't know everything. So what would you recommend for me to learn more about finances? Like whether it's YouTube or reading a book.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of information out there between YouTube, between ChatGPT or Claude, uh, asking it what you should know about buying the financials of a small business. And then I think it's just looking at businesses, like looking on these websites, getting signing some NDAs, getting the financials sent over to you, and then asking questions about them. So what does this mean? What is this term here? What is this? Why is the insurance so high on this company? Why is this, this line item keeps showing up that I don't know what it is? What is,
Mhm.
you know, why is this line item so expensive for this business and so small for this business? So the more you look at, the better you'll become at analyzing them and understanding what you're seeing. Yeah, yeah. We all know college does they don't always teach the actual practical skills,
That
especially
we
with
need
small
to learn.
business.
Mhm.
You've probably heard the term EBITDA before in some kind of finance class, but SDE is usually reserved for smaller businesses, so it doesn't come up a lot in college courses.
Yeah. The practical stuff that we need to know, but
Yep.
that's good because I love ChatGPT. She is my friend, so that's great to use AI, and then also like looking on the website. So like I'm got my pen and paper, and I could be doing the math and things like that to see running the numbers. So that's some really good advice on what skills do I need to have and what experience I need to have. So that's good. So this
I
been a
just
really great.
I just want to throw one note about AI in here before we go too much further.
Okay.
Usually, when you're getting these financial statements from a broker or from the seller, you're signing a non-disclosure agreement. So it is very important to remember that you should not just take those documents and put them into your favorite AI model,
Okay.
because that is public information. So you are violating your NDA by uploading those documents into an LLM. So you want to make sure, if you're going to, if you're actually analyzing real numbers from a business, uh, make sure it's anonymized or cut off or changed in a way that ChatGPT or Claude or whatever model you choose
Mhm.
isn't going to know what business it is and isn't going to be saving that information. So, even when you do it in anonymous mode, it's still saving that information. There's still possibilities that it gets out there. So just be aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the disclaimer. Yeah, so
Yep.
yeah, thank you for the disclaimer because we do not want to go against the
Yep.
non-disclosure agreement. So using more chat GBT as well, what I was thinking, like to explain the SDE more, like
Yep.
those terminologies. So
Yeah.
when I get it, can help me with the terminology and understand it a bit better. But that's a good disclaimer, not to just throw everything in there and say, hey, analyze this for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
That would not be good. So that's good. So this was great. So great to know like the bigger picture, to be curious, reaching out, looking at businesses that are on sale on those two websites, reaching out to brokers, looking at the numbers as well, and then evaluating the business. So looking at, like we said, the numbers, looking at the red flags, which is really good, and then understanding what seller's finance is, and to have those cash reserves also on the side. So closing it out, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone who's listening if they wanted to buy a business in the next 1 to 3 years? What would you tell them? What would be your advice?
If their horizon is more on the 2 to 3 year range, I would say just start browsing the listings right away. Make it a point of doing a deep dive into at least one business a week, um, or at least a couple a month, or something of that nature. Just start looking, start browsing, because when you're getting closer to being ready to pull the trigger, you'll have all of that collective knowledge in your brain already of what's out there, how are things presented, what the prices look like, all that type of stuff. A friend of mine talks about it this in real estate is the only way you'll know if something's a good deal is if you've seen a bunch of other bad deals first. And it's, so doing that, if you're on that 2 to 3 horizon, if you're on the 1 year side of things, if you think it's going to, buying a business is not like buying a house. Although I know some people buying a house, it has been a years long process lately, but buying a business is a long process. You're not going to find for most people, you're not going to find the perfect business the first day you look. You're not going to put an offer in the first day you look. You're not going to get a sales, something under contract in the first week or month. It's going to take some time to find the right opportunity. And then once you find the right opportunity, it can take months longer to actually close on it. So be prepared for a 6 to 12 month or longer process to buy a business. So if you're on that 1 year track, you should be looking much more seriously. You should be starting to make some, sign some NDAs, go really deep dives into some of these businesses, having conversations with sellers, maybe putting in an LOI, putting in an offer that you're comfortable with. Starting to line up your legal team, your accounting team, networking with accountants and lawyers to figure out who you might use for the process. And then also getting around other people that are trying to do this as well. I recently launched a mastermind group for people that are trying to buy businesses so that we can share experiences and people can lean on each other for, hey, is this a good deal? What am I missing here? Is there an opportunity I'm not seeing? Is there a red flag that I'm not seeing? So that type of thing, getting around the right people that are going to help you in that process and that are in the same similar boat as you.
I really like that. I really like that. So like what we have already talked about is like start searching, looking at businesses. And then I like the quote you said, you only know if it's a good deal if you've seen some bad deals. So it's not like a one and done. I'm going to get on the site and I'm going to say, oh, this is a good deal. Let's go for it.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
it's constantly looking and comparing
Yep.
the different offerings as well. And then I think that is really good of getting around people who are doing what you want to do, because that has been a game changer for me. Starting my business and even going full time last month is being around other people who are full time entrepreneurs who are building a business from scratch, and just being around them, their mindset, how they are doing things, how are they looking at things has been really great. So I really like that. That point you said of getting around other people who are building a business. And then you talked about you have a mastermind. Can you talk about more like how do I become a part of it?
Yeah. It is so I'm doing an application process for people that
Mhm.
are serious about buying a business. It is going to be capped at about 12 to 15 people. We have a few of us in there already. We're going to do group calls every other Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. And then there's a little forum that I have built into my website where people can, in the group, can share what they're looking at, ask questions. I will jump in and answer. Other people can jump in and share their 2 cents as well. So it's really like a team effort to help each other and give each other the confidence too.
Mhm.
I've found through all of the talking I've done to people that are in the process of buying a business or trying to buy a business, one of the biggest hurdles they face is their own mindset and their own confidence
Right.
to make that leap. And I'm sure you felt that with starting your own business and leaving your corporate job
Yes.
to go into it full time. I'm sure you've had some other people in your life somewhere along the line that helped give you that encouragement and helped say, yeah, that is a good idea. Go
Mhm,
for it.
mhm,
I'm sure you've had plenty of people that said, no, what are you crazy out of your mind? But
mhm, and you don't wanna be around those people.
there's nope. There's, so That's kind of the main reason I started it, is to really just to give people that confidence.
Mhm.
You're a businesswoman already. You know how to read numbers. You can figure it out. But
Mhm.
that confidence piece, I think, is the most critical piece when you're going to when you're going to make an offer, and when you're going to close, and through the due diligence process. So you can join by going to powerbiz.com/mastermind. There's an application button on there, and then we schedule a call. You and I have already had a call. So if you want to join, you can go straight to the joining process. And we'd love to have you, because you obviously know your stuff, and it would be another fresh perspective, which is what makes masterminds great, is
Mhm.
the various perspectives that everybody brings, the uh, different insights, different ways of looking at things, and and then overall giving each other the confidence to do it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love that. So, yes, I appreciate it, Tom. I feel like after this conversation, I feel confident to like start searching and looking for starting that buying a business process, So that first step I'm going to start taking, my goal is to one business or maybe two businesses a week, start looking on those websites and just start browsing and curiosity, seeing what's out there in the San Diego area, and then also get around other people who are, say, on that same path that I am on, of just like curiosity, looking as well, and be like, what did you find? And things like that. So, this was a really good conversation. I feel more knowledgeable about the buying process and what my next steps are.
Awesome. Glad to hear that. I want to add one more piece of information for you specifically, because, and I'm not 100% certain on the the process with this, but the SBA, Small Business Administration, through the banks that they work with, does have programs where you can buy adjacent similar businesses for v- I think 0% down still, maybe 10%, but that might be worth, so for you specifically, if you are looking to add that deli or the cheese shop or another charcuterie business,
Mhm.
those you could be at a high advantage for certain types of financing with that as well. Um, just to share that, you might want to look into that a little bit more as well, while you're doing your initial searching for businesses.
I like that. I like that. And also the SPA, I have yeah, know about it as a small business. So they also have loans, but they also have
Yep.
grants and things like
Yep.
that as well. So that is also a really good resource. Mhm.
Yep. Awesome. I'm glad this was helpful for you. Hopefully, it was helpful for all of you out there listening and watching today. Um, Anything else you want to tell people where they can find your business and your workshops before we get out of here?
Yes, yes. So I am based in San Diego, California, and so I do luxury catering. And so you can find my business. My website is www.boardandbougiesd.com. And also I do workshops, which are really fun, where I teach people, teams, business teams, on how to build a board. And it's very great team building, also creativity, team bonding as well. And so I really like love doing them, and teams love it as well. Something different to bring to your office.
Awesome. Yeah, I've seen you post about some of these workshops. I think you've done some at wineries that sound
Yeah.
amazing and fun. So check her out if you're in that Southern California area. If you enjoyed this podcast, please let me know in the comments what you thought about this style of episode. And if you are somebody that's in the process or interested in buying a business that has some additional questions and willing to come on, I think I'd love to do more of this style of episode. So love to hear from you, what you thought, whether I should do more of these, and if so, I need some guests for them.
Mhm.
So, and then if you enjoyed this in general, or you enjoy the podcast in general, please take a second to leave a rating and review wherever you are listening or watching. Really helps us get the word out, and helps other people find us. So with that, thank you, Tiara, for being here today. I really appreciated all the questions, and I will see everybody else soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Business Buying for Financial Independence. If you're serious about owning your time and building long-term wealth, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.